Most beginners walk straight to the end of a pier, cast as far as they can, and throw their bait past the fish feeding beneath their feet. Then the bait disappears without moving the rod. The current drags the rig through somebody else's line, and when a real fish finally bends the rod, they discover they have no way to lift it onto the deck. A pier looks like a platform over open water. Underneath, it behaves more like an artificial reef. Its pilings, shade, current, and changing depth create several different feeding zones, and each one requires a different decision. Learn to read those zones, and a quiet rod stops feeling like bad luck. It starts telling you exactly what to change. Mistake number 1 is treating casting distance like the goal. A pier isn't one uniform fishing spot. It may contain shallow water near shore, a dark shadow beneath the deck, barnacle-covered pilings, moving water along the sides, and a deeper channel near the end. Different fish can use each zone, sometimes at the same time. Before you cast, look for a reason to put your bait somewhere. A sharp shade line gives predators a place to ambush food. Nervous baitfish or diving birds suggest something is feeding nearby. A patch of darker water may indicate a change in depth, bottom type, or shadow. You might also see a current seam where fast water slides beside slower water. Start beneath you. Lower the bait near a piling while keeping the line clear of the structure, then test the edge of the pier's shadow. After that, make a short cast up current so the rig settles toward your target instead of immediately sweeping away from it. Only cast farther when you have a reason, such as reaching a channel, sandbar edge, or visible school of feeding fish. If baitfish are packed close to shore, predators may be following them. Walking past that activity to reach the end can mean walking past the best water. Use a controlled search pattern: straight down, short cast, medium cast, and then long cast if the evidence supports it. Let each presentation settle before moving to the next distance. Accuracy beats distance. The goal isn't to launch a sinker into another time zone, it's to place your bait where a fish is likely to encounter it. Before any cast, look behind and above you. Piers contain railings, lights, benches, loose line, and people who may step into your backswing. Tell anyone nearby that you're casting. On a crowded deck, a controlled underhand swing may be safer than an overhead cast. But finding a promising zone doesn't help if your rig can't stay there. That brings us to mistake number 2, using a rig that doesn't match the water. Don't copy a complicated setup without understanding its job. A basic bottom rig presents bait near sand, mud, rocks, or the base of the pilings. A float rig suspends bait higher, which can help when fish are feeding above snags or following baitfish. A lure lets you search several depths, but only when you can control its speed without cutting through neighboring lines. For bait fishing, use the lightest sinker that maintains reasonable contact with your target area. Too little weight lets the rig race down current and collect everybody else's line. Too much weight makes the bait feel lifeless and can hide gentle bites. Lower the rig and watch what happens. If it never settles and the line keeps sliding sideways, add a little weight. If it lands like an anchor and refuses to move in mild current, try slightly less. Directly beneath the pier, a compact rig with a short leader usually tangles less than a long leader spinning freely in the flow. If you're fishing above crabs, rocks, or other snags, raising the bait slightly may work better than repeatedly donating hooks to the bottom. Change one part at a time. A rig is useful because of what it allows your bait to do, not because someone online called it the best pier rig. The next mistake is where beginners spend the most money trying to fix the wrong problem. Mistake number 3 is arriving with gear that's either too delicate for the structure or much heavier than the fish require. For many ordinary saltwater piers, a medium or medium-heavy spinning rod around 7 to 9 feet long can be a forgiving starting point. But the appropriate setup changes with the local current, structure, and fish, so check with the pier's bait shop or experienced regulars before buying specialized equipment. Pair the rod with a balanced reel and line suitable for the fish and structure. Braided line provides useful sensitivity, while a short monofilament or fluorocarbon leader can provide abrasion resistance around shells, concrete, and pilings. Your first tackle selection can remain small: a few appropriate sinkers, swivels, hooks, and leader material. Choose the hook according to the bait and expected fish, not the enormous creature you're imagining. The hook point needs to remain exposed. If the bait buries it, bites become missed fish. You can ignore giant reels, enormous hooks, and specialized rods until experience reveals a real need. If nearby anglers are controlling ordinary fish on lighter equipment, that's evidence that presentation and line control matter more than brute force. Even perfectly matched gear can fail when the bait becomes a spinning meatball. Mistake number 4 is using too much bait and then forgetting about it. An oversized piece of bait can twist your leader, cover the hook point, and let small fish steal mouthfuls without getting caught. Bigger bait doesn't automatically mean bigger fish. Sometimes it only means more leverage for a bait thief. Cut bait into a neat piece that fits the hook. Pass the hook through firm skin or another tough section so the bait stays attached while the point remains clear. With shrimp, use only enough to cover part of the hook. With live bait, follow a local legal hooking method that keeps it lively. Lower the bait beside the pier and watch it. If it spins in the current, trim it smaller or hook it more evenly. Check the bait after a suspicious tap, a sudden slack line, or several quiet minutes. Crabs and small fish can clean a hook without producing the dramatic strike you expected. Fresh bait should still resemble and smell like food, not a faded piece of leather. Keep it cool and out of direct sunlight. If the hook comes back empty, reduce the bait size or adjust how it's attached before rebuilding the entire rig. That missing bait is information. Something found it, even if the rod never seemed to move. And that brings us to mistake number 5. Ignoring your fishing line. The rod tip gets most of the attention, but the line connects your bait to the current, bottom, fish, pilings, and every angler beside you. Its angle is a live status report. A gradual lean-down current may be normal. A sudden sideways race could be a fish, drifting weed, or another person's line. Unexpected slack can mean the sinker moved, or a fish picked up the bait and swam toward you. Keep the rod within reach and maintain light tension. Don't pull so firmly that you drag the sinker constantly, but don't leave a giant bow in the line that hides every bite. Watch where neighboring lines enter the water. If your rig drifts across them, reel in and reset immediately. Don't wait for the lines to knot together before admitting there's a problem. When a fish runs beneath the pier, move the rod tip toward the edge and guide the line away from sharp concrete. If the fish changes direction, follow it when the pier and other anglers allow you to do so. Good line control catches more fish, reveals subtle bites, and prevents most avoidable arguments on the deck. But movement in the line doesn't always mean it's time to swing. Mistake number 6 is reacting to every tap with a violent hook set. Waves, crabs, small fish, drifting grass, and a sinker bumping along the bottom can all shake the rod. Look for the difference between rhythm and change. Waves tend to produce a repeated rise and fall. Current creates steady pressure. A feeding fish is more likely to produce irregular taps, increasing weight, a sideways run, or sudden slack. The correct response also depends on the hook. With a traditional J-shaped hook, wait for the fish to take the bait firmly, reel away the slack, and lift with controlled pressure. With a circle hook, don't jerk. A circle hook is designed to move toward the corner of the fish's mouth as the line tightens. Point the rod toward the fish, reel steadily, and let the rod load. The worst time to learn how a circle hook works is immediately after your first serious bite. If tiny taps repeatedly leave you with an empty hook, reduce the bait size before replacing your whole setup. Once the rod bends and stays bent, maintain steady pressure. Wild pumping creates slack, and slack gives the hook another opportunity to fall out. Now you've finally hooked a good fish. The rod is bent, the line is tight, and the fish is directly below you. That's when mistake number 7 appears. You never planned how to lift it onto the pier. A pier may stand many feet above the water. Hoisting a decent fish by the fishing line can break the leader, pull out the hook, damage the rod, or injure the fish. The larger the fish, the worse that plan becomes. Before casting, locate the safest landing area. Some piers have a lower platform or designated landing section. Others require a landing net, and higher piers may require a drop net lowered on a separate rope. Find out whether the pier provides a communal net or whether you need to bring your own. Don't assume someone else will abandon their fishing to rescue yours. When using a drop net, keep the fish's head in the water while the net is lowered. Guide the fish over the center, maintain light pressure, and have the net lifted smoothly. Never wrap the rope around your hand or lean dangerously over the railing. The biggest fish of your trip shouldn't be hanging beneath the pier while you ask everyone what to do next. Your landing plan needs to exist before the bite. Getting the fish onto the deck only reveals mistake number 8. You didn't prepare to handle what you caught. Pier fishing can produce an unfamiliar fish at any moment. Some species have teeth, others have sharp gill plates, hard spines, stingers, or other defenses that aren't obvious until you grab them incorrectly. Keep long-handled pliers, a measuring tool, and any locally recommended de-hooking equipment ready. Identify the species before touching it. If you aren't certain, keep your hands away and ask an experienced angler, pier employee, or local authority for help. Don't assume a small fish is harmless. Don't step on it, kick it across the deck, or hold it by a body part you can't identify. Know the local size limits and protected species before the trip. If the fish must be released, minimize its time out of the water and handle it only as much as necessary. If the hook can't be removed safely, cutting the leader may be better than injuring yourself or the fish during a long struggle. Landing the fish isn't the end of the problem. It's the moment when preparation matters most. Even a perfect setup can be defeated before you leave home. Mistake number 9 is arriving without checking conditions and rules. Imagine driving an hour to the pier with one carefully prepared rig. When you arrive, the wind is pushing directly across the deck. Your sinker can't hold, the bait shop is closed, and the rig you tied uses more hooks than local regulations allow. The same pier can fish differently when the tide, current, wind, and baitfish activity change. Before leaving, check the weather, wind, tide, operating hours, license requirements, size limits, legal baits, and hook restrictions. The period leading into and moving away from high or low tide can be a useful starting point because flowing water often moves bait and encourages feeding. Exact high or low tide may produce slack water, and the best stage varies by pier and species. The tide is evidence, not a guarantee. Bring drinking water, sun protection, closed-toe shoes, pliers, and whatever landing equipment the pier requires. Keep hooks secured while walking. If lightning is nearby, waves are washing across the deck, or the pier has been closed for dangerous conditions, the correct fishing technique is to leave. And now we reach the mistake that wastes more time than any single bad cast. Mistake number 10 is changing everything randomly when the fish don't bite. New bait, heavier sinker, longer cast, different rig, different location. If you change all of them together and finally catch something, you still won't know what solved the problem. Instead, use an adjustment ladder. First, check whether your bait is still present, fresh, and properly hooked. Second, change distance. Third, change depth. Then consider changing the bait or moving to another section of the pier. One variable, one observation, then one decision. Suppose fresh bait beside a piling produces nothing. Make a short cast along the shadow line. Still quiet? Try slightly deeper water or suspend the bait above the bottom if crabs and snags are the problem. If other anglers are catching, notice their distance, depth, bait size, and line angle without crowding them. You're looking for the pattern, not trying to steal their exact position. If nobody is catching and you see no baitfish, birds, current seams, or surface activity, moving along the pier may be smarter than cycling through every lure in your box. A quiet rod isn't an absence of information. A stolen bait means something is feeding. A snag reveals structure, although your rig may be too low or your leader too long. Repeated bites at one depth tell you to return there. Baitfish suddenly scattering may signal that a predator has arrived. Your line sweeping sideways says the weight, casting angle, or current has changed. Every result becomes useful when you know which variable produced it. Pier fishing can't promise you a fish, but it can give you a repeatable way to stop guessing. Read the structure, control the bait, watch the line, and change one variable at a time. That's when the pier stops being a railing over random water and becomes an artificial reef you actually know how to fish.